The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Marketing with Purpose, our series where we explore how to build resonance, connection, and real-world growth through meaningful marketing. I'm Stephen Sakach, joined by my co-host Tullio, Siragusa, and Mike Liwski. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey there, Stephen.
It's another hump day.
Yes, it is. So today's topic is how purpose aligns teams, not just messages. Because while a strong purpose might show up in your advertising, one of its real powers is what happens inside your company. And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but let's get into it, guys.
Yeah, it's easy, right, to think that purpose is sort of messaging strategy, or some sort of tool that's just for marketing. But at its core, purpose is really an alignment tool for your whole team, right? It's about how you get your product team, your customer service team, really your leadership team even, all moving in the same direction.
Exactly. And so let's take a look at it. Without a shared purpose, even a well-intentioned, well-meaning team might end up working in silos. And then your marketing might be saying one thing while your operation is delivering something else. And that ends up creating dissonance. So that's the worst thing that can happen to a brand, where you have a look and feel in the front of the office, but then the reality is completely disconnected. That actually ends up creating bad perception and bad reputation. So people can feel that. So you have, that alignment is critical. That it's both internal and external.
Yeah, and when your teams are aligned by purpose, you don't just have brand consistency, you have brand integrity. And this is really, one of the big reasons why we've built this podcast is, we're marketers, but we also know you really have to live by these higher purpose things. If you want to tell a story from a higher purpose, from a more, empathetic and compassionate place, you've got to live by it. So you want to make sure, that your customer experience matches that brand promise, because everyone inside the company is all believing in this same why. And so, like Tullio said, people can feel that, whether you're doing it or you're not doing it. They'll feel it either way.
And it kind of reminds me of like parenting, right? You can tell your children one thing, but if you don't act according to what you're telling them, they're going to do exactly the thing that you do, not what you tell them to do. So, and the key thing is that internal alignment is what fuels that external authenticity. And so in order to be authentic in what you're saying, you have to live it. Just like if you're a parent and you want your children to act a certain way, well, if you're not living that yourself, they're not going to do it. So it's got to be authentically tied to reality. And because people can tell that. They can tell a brand that's just sort of saying the right things versus living them. It's that old, don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. You need to walk the walk in order for the talk to actually sound authentic.
If you think of all the great brands that have existed, they all do this, right? So their employees, their customers, they all can see it and then they can feel it. So let's say, for example, that maybe your purpose is around empowering entrepreneurs. If you're a finance team, let's just say, is nickel and diming startups with surprise fees. Your marketing can't fix that, no matter what you end up trying to do. So, purpose isn't, again, just this headline that's not being lived inside the organization. It's really this cultural backbone that aligns throughout the whole company.
Yeah, exactly. And, brands that live their purpose through every function, they build trust faster, they retain talent longer, attract customers who stick around because they see what you see, and it's what you see is what you get, right? It's true to them. They feel it. It's just not walking the you're just not talking the talk. It's walking that talk, like we said.
Yeah, I want to add something real quick to what you said, Mike, because I think it's like so spot on. Just another example. I've worked with companies in the past that their message is creating value for the client, right? Maybe they're a technology company and their value is their messaging is about value creation for the client. So it's not about being the cheapest player on the block, but the one with the most expertise and maybe can create the great value. But then they nickel and dime like a really good talented engineer or someone to go hire them. They'll look at the hire as a cost instead of an investment, but they're selling an investment. So it's like you're running your business on managing costs, but you're selling the client or making an investment for growth. There's a disconnect there on how you treat people that you're hiring versus how you're positioning yourself in the marketplace. That's becomes a disingenuous. So it's so key. And I've also even had the situation where it's like, you don't be surprised when your clients start nickel and diming you for that value you're trying to create, because you do the same thing with your employees when you're hiring them. You know, what you do is going to be replicated externally. So if you want to shift that, you have to start shifting how you are aligned internally. It's such a critical thing that a lot of companies miss this. They think they can, what they see out there doesn't have to match what they do inside. And it always fails. So they have to match or it doesn't come out as authentic. You actually could hurt your sales team if you are not authentic in how you run your business with doing what you say internally.
Yeah, you're shooting yourself in the foot, as you'd say. Yeah, absolutely. And it's at such a critical time in the creation of that relationship, like you mentioned with a new employee. That's when you really want to, build the most trust. When it's a new customer, of course, that's when you really need to build the most trust. So, how do you, as we talked about, right? What you see is what you get. How do you create that alignment then within your teams? It's a great question, right? So really it starts by making sure that you're absolutely clear, right? That you have clarity. Everyone should know these three things, right? What the company stands for, why that purpose matters, and then their role, right? How their role contributes to that purpose. Then when alignment, becomes motivational at that point in time, it's not just sort of like this top-down mandate. They, understand it and they can contribute to it, and now they're living it and they're feeling it.
Yeah, and that's the key, is that it can't be a top-down thing. It has to be co-owned by everyone. So how can you do that? What's a practical way to implement this and to kind of do a check-in with yourself, right? As an organization, like that song says, check yourself before you hurt yourself, right? So it's kind of like one practice we actually recommend is to create a purpose audit ritual. So like do some rituals internally in the organization. It might be like a monthly team reflection or a story sharing moment in your whole hands meeting. If you're not having an all hands meeting, that might be a good start. Start with that practice. So doing a monthly team reflection, and ask, how did our work this month live our purpose? And if you haven't defined your purpose, that might be a good exercise to do first before you have these conversations. So everything's sort of intertwined, right? You can't do it if you don't haven't defined your purpose. So, but how did we live our purpose? Were there some examples? And when the teams begin to reflect together on this, then they not only stay connected around that purpose, because it's square and center, it's a conversation piece, it's something you look forward to next month, something that you're looking to share with your peers. It becomes gamified, right? But it becomes the very fabric on how you do things. And then when there's a situation that comes up that's tricky, you might be like, what can I do here that's going to contribute to my purpose? Maybe I'll be able to share this in my next all hands meeting. So you create this desire for everyone to be in alignment. You can actually gamify it. And that's when, the magic starts to happen.
Yeah. And, another tip is to try and figure out how you can build some KPIs that align with this as well. So if your purpose is about sustainability, maybe this is something you can track. I know like UPS does this with like a triple bottom line approach, right? So they're tracking data to not just profit, but also to planet related data and their people related data. So the planet might be, all this energy consumption they're able to save and things like that. There's a lot of data you can tie in to your purpose oriented kind of things that you're tracking in there. And that helps with that alignment, I think. So let's go over a couple examples here with how purpose kind of plays out in some other companies. So Bombas is an example here. This apparel company, they're known for their socks, underwears, t-shirts, and their purpose is clear: to help those in need by donating an item for every item purchased. But what's powerful is how their purpose shows up internally across teams. So the product team designs clothes specifically to meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness. So extra cushioning, seamless toes, dark colors that wear well. The customer support team there is trained to talk about their mission, not just resolve issues. And then distribution and logistics teams, they work with over 3,500 giving partners to ensure that donated items reach the right places efficiently. So they're trying to figure this out all along, every little layer of the company and every department.
Yeah, and so then that essentially gives every one of those teams a perfect line of sight, right, to what is my mission. And I was going to mention
Think
too,
about it. Every t-shirt I sell, I clothe somebody who doesn't have a t-shirt, who doesn't have clothes. I mean, how impactful is that mission? It sounds nice, but in reality, everyone's motivated to contribute to the well-being of those less fortunate. Talk about a high-level purpose. That's just impressive to me.
For sure, right? It doesn't get a lot higher than that. And I was going to say, as well, for those that are listening to this episode, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about purpose and mission, you can go back to one of our previous episodes. I think it was either episode 5 or episode 6, where you can learn, about the importance and the difference as well between purpose and mission, and then as well as kind of your vision. But yeah, like we said, it gives them that perfect line of sight that helps drive focus. One, it generates pride, as Tullio was sort of mentioning, and then as well, it'll help create innovation, right? Because how do we continue to try to achieve that purpose in our life? So another great example, again, about purpose, being driven with KPIs, is Chobani. If you look them up, you'll notice that their purpose is really about making good food more accessible, and to do that really through values-led business model that they have. And so they're not just talking about health, but really what they're talking about is creating operational alignment around providing the quality of their food. And so their HR team runs refugee hiring initiatives, not as a PR stunt, quite frankly, but even as part of their everyday life within the workforce, as a workforce strategy. Second, with the marketing team, they're out there telling real stories from the factory floor, and as well including the partnerships that they have with farmers. And it's not just sort of this real studio polished type of advertisement that you see coming out of the marketing team at Chobani. And then lastly, with the finance team, they have measures of success that are all in terms of course, profit. However, they're also looking at community impact, which is really a reflection of it, and that shows up in their annual spend. How much are they putting towards making that impact in the community? So again, you can see a great example in Chobani of all those teams aligned directly with their purpose.
When you operate with purpose so well integrated, it literally becomes like your shared operating system. It's not just a slogan. It's what your brand stands for. It's authentic. It's consistent. And companies that operate this way scale at a different pace. You can't stop and you can't compete with a company that operates that way. You just can't.
Yeah, and when your teams are aligned by purpose, everything flows more naturally. Your collaboration, your decision making, the innovation we talked about, and of course, your marketing. I mean, you're able to get these great stories coming straight from your team. And that's what we love as marketers, is being able to tell that story.
I love that point about the operating system. It very much becomes like that. So we've shared a number of things about alignment with purpose and how to do that in a practical sense here in this episode. And next time, we're going to continue to explore how to tell our stories and show that our purpose is actually part of our lives, we'll show how you can demonstrate your purpose in action and not just talk about it, but really walk the walk.
So until then, keep your compass true and keep marketing with purpose.
All right, Dan. Thanks for listening to the Bliss Business Podcast.